For minds ready to grow, meet mental mastery. The Psychology of Growth and Grit, the new series unlocking the science of personal growth. 10 human-centered episodes blend neuroscience, mindset, and emotional intelligence. Achieve more. Think deeper. Your journey to mental mastery starts now.
The mindset and science of self-discipline and resilience.
The mindset and science of self-discipline and resilience. Hello and welcome. Today we have a fascinating deep dive into what it really takes to cultivate self-discipline, resilience, mental toughness, and long-term motivation. We're exploring the mindset, the science, and the personal journeys behind these traits. So if you've ever wondered why some people can bounce back from anything life throws at them or stick to their goals no matter what, stick around. We promise an insightful ride.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah, and with me is my co-host, Michael. We're excited about this episode because these topics aren't just buzzwords. They're the cornerstones of personal growth and success. And let's be honest, who hasn't struggled with staying motivated or being consistent at some point? We certainly have. In this conversation, we'll blend motivational energy with thoughtful analysis. It's going to be human, relatable, and hopefully as engaging as a candid chat over coffee.
Exactly. Let me paint a picture. It's 5 a.m. on a frosty winter morning. The alarm rings in the darkness. One person rolls over, hits the snooze button, and burrows into the blankets, choosing comfort over an early workout. But someone else, maybe the kind of person we're talking about today, takes a deep breath, sits up, and laces up their running shoes despite the cold and despite their body screaming to stay in bed. What makes the difference between those two choices in that pivotal moment?
That's a powerful scenario. It often comes down to mindset, specifically a mindset of self-discipline and mental toughness. And that's exactly what we're here to explore today, how to develop that mindset in ourselves. We'll unpack the psychology and even the neuroscience behind it.
Right. Why does one person embrace the tough times while another crumbles? We're going to dig into that. We'll talk about the science of motivation and willpower, share practical strategies from habit building to handling temptation, and discuss how things like emotional intelligence and having a purpose factor in.
And we'll be sharing stories, research, and even a couple of role-play scenarios and thought experiments along the way. Every few minutes, we'll introduce a fresh angle or story so it stays engaging. By the end, we hope you'll not only understand these concepts better, but also feel inspired and equipped with practical insights to strengthen your own mental toughness and motivation.
So, whether you're an advanced English learner tuning in to improve your language skills, an ambitious professional striving for consistency, or just someone on a personal development journey looking for a motivational boost, you're in the right place.
Here's the big question. Why do some people seem to have an almost unyielding drive, pushing through obstacles that would make others quit? Is it something they're born with or something we can all develop? Today, we're going to argue it's very much the latter, something we can cultivate. And we'll show you how.
Absolutely. Think of the saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Our aim is to help you become the tough when things get tough. So let's start by clarifying what we mean by self-discipline, resilience, and all these terms, because understanding them is the first step to cultivating them.
What do we mean by self-discipline, resilience, and mental toughness?
Before we dive deeper, let's make sure we're on the same page with these terms. Self-discipline is essentially your ability to control your impulses and do what you know you should do, even when you don't feel like it. It's saying no to short-term temptations in order to say yes to long-term goals. For example, self-discipline is what keeps you writing one page of your novel every day or getting up for that early workout on a cold morning. It's closely tied to consistency and habits.
Right. Meanwhile, resilience is the ability to bounce back from setbacks or failures. If self-discipline is about the daily grind and making steady progress, resilience is about how you respond when life knocks you down. Do you give up or do you get back up, maybe even learn from the setback and come back stronger? Resilient people might bend, but they don't break. They remain flexible and optimistic under pressure. You can think of resilience as what helps you recover and even grow from adversity, rather than being crushed by it.
And mental toughness is closely related. Some people use it interchangeably with resilience, but there's a subtle difference. Mental toughness often refers to a mindset of perseverance and inner strength in the face of challenges. It's what allows someone to keep running mile after mile in a marathon or stay calm and focused under intense pressure. You might think of mental toughness as the grit that psychologist Angela Duckworth famously wrote about the passion and perseverance for very long-term goals. In fact, Duckworth found that this quality of grit was a better predictor of success for military cadets at West Point than even their intelligence or physical strength. Cadets who scored higher on grit were more likely to make it through a brutal training program, regardless of talent or IQ.
That's fascinating. It really shows that talent or smarts alone aren't the whole story. Often it's persistence, that stick-to-itiveness, that matters most. There's a saying, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Mental toughness is what keeps you working hard and not giving up when things get difficult.
Well said. Finally, let's touch on motivation. Motivation is the drive or desire to act. It's like the spark that gets you started. Maybe you're inspired by a vision of a healthier body or excited about a new project. But motivation can be fickle. It ebbs and flows. One day you feel fired up, the next day you don't. That's why we often say motivation might get you started, but it's self-discipline that keeps you going when motivation fades.
Exactly. We all start new projects or goals feeling motivated, but when that initial excitement wears off, what then? That's where discipline, habits, and mindset have to take over to carry you through. A lot of people think, I just need more motivation. But often what we need is a better strategy or stronger habits for those days when we aren't motivated. We'll get into the science of how to build those habits in a bit.
And one more thing, when we talk about mindset, that includes having a certain attitude toward challenges. For instance, do you see challenges as threats or as opportunities to improve? Your mindset can determine whether you persist or quit when things get hard. We'll discuss something called the growth mindset later on, which is really important for resilience and long-term improvement.
Great. So with our key terms defined, self-discipline, resilience, mental toughness, motivation, let's start digging into how these work. What actually happens in our minds and brains when we try to stick to our goals? Why is it so hard sometimes to do something we know is good for us? Time to explore the science behind willpower and motivation.
The science of self-discipline, willpower, and brain wiring.
Let's talk science for a bit. What's happening in our brain when we exercise self-discipline or lose it? A key player is the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain right behind your forehead. It's responsible for executive functions like decision-making, focus, and impulse control. Whenever you resist the urge to scroll through your phone and instead continue working or studying, that's your prefrontal cortex in action, exerting willpower.
But here's the catch. The prefrontal cortex is a bit like a muscle. It can get tired. If you force yourself to make dozens of decisions or exhibit self-control all day long, you might experience what's known as decision fatigue. Have you ever noticed that by evening, your willpower to choose the right thing, like a healthy dinner over fast food, or working on a project instead of binge-watching TV, just erodes? It's not your imagination. The mental energy for self-control can become depleted after a long day.
Exactly. One famous example, Steve Jobs famously wore the same style of black turtlenecks every day, and President Obama said he only wore gray or blue suits during his presidency. They did this to reduce trivial decisions each day so they could save mental energy for more important stuff. By automating routine choices, they conserved willpower. The lesson for us is that building routines and habits can make self-discipline easier by turning important behaviors into automatic actions that don't require as much active decision-making.
Right. If every morning at 7 a.m. you automatically go for a jog because it's an ingrained habit, you don't have to wrestle with the decision, will I exercise or not? It's just what you do. As Charles Duhigg, author of The Power of Habit, explains, habits work on a loop of cue, routine, reward. You can shape your environment to provide cues that trigger the routine you want, and then enjoy a satisfying reward. For example, if you want to develop a habit of exercising after work, your cue could be seeing your gym bag by the door when you get home. The routine is the workout itself, and the reward might be a delicious protein smoothie or simply the endorphin rush and relaxation you feel afterward. By consistently repeating this loop, the action becomes almost second nature, requiring much less conscious effort. In fact, research suggests that when you repeat a behavior many times, the neural pathways in your brain associated with it get stronger and more efficient. It's literally your brain adapting to make that action easier for, You. This kind of neuroplasticity means you're wiring your own brain for that habit. So, a well-formed habit takes some of the load off your willpower.
And that ties into something else we know from neuroscience. Our brains thrive on rewards, specifically the chemical dopamine. Now, dopamine is often called the feel-good neurotransmitter, but it's really more about anticipation and motivation than just pleasure. In fact, research shows that dopamine spikes before you get a reward in anticipation of it. Essentially, the brain rewards you for chasing a goal, not just for achieving it.
That's fascinating. It flips how we usually think about motivation. We often assume we need to feel motivated before we act. But really, taking action can create motivation. You get a little dopamine boost as you make progress. It's like the brain saying, yes, keep going. There's a great line. The brain doesn't reward you for success. It rewards you for pursuing success.
So one practical takeaway is, if you're feeling unmotivated, commit to just starting small. Tell yourself you'll work on that daunting report for just 5 minutes, or you'll tidy one corner of the messy room, or jog for just 10 minutes. Often that little start is enough to get the dopamine flowing, and suddenly you feel more driven to continue. It's a trick to galvanize yourself into action. In fact, you don't act because you're motivated. Rather, you get motivated because you act.
This also busts some common myths. People say, I need motivation to start. In reality, starting will help bring motivation. Or they think watching a motivational video will get me going. Sure, it might give a quick emotional high, a quick dopamine spike, but without real action, that high fades and can even leave you feeling guilty or deflated afterward. Another one, motivation and discipline are the same. Not true. Discipline is like a steady engine that keeps you moving, whereas motivation is a spark that comes and goes. You need that steady engine for the long haul.
I like that engine analogy. Another popular concept these days is the dopamine detox. It's not a formal scientific term, but it's out there. The idea is that if you find yourself compulsively seeking quick dopamine hits, like constantly checking social media, snacking on junk food, or binge playing video games, you might desensitize your brain's reward system. Then, more meaningful, but subtler, rewards like making progress on a goal don't feel as satisfying. So some people take a break from these instant gratifications for a day or two, no social media, no sugary snacks, etc. Basically a short fast from easy dopamine. The goal is to resensitize the brain so you can enjoy the simple pleasures of productive activities again.
That makes sense. If we're inundated with easy pleasures all the time, a hard-earned achievement might not register as strongly. Cutting back on those quick hits can help us regain our drive for the more important things. Think of it like resetting your taste buds by eating healthier food for a while. Initially, it's tough, but then you start to appreciate the natural flavors more. Similarly, after a dopamine detox, going for a run or reading a challenging book might start to feel more rewarding than it did when you were juggling a dozen instant distractions.
And here's one more encouraging fact from brain science. Neuroplasticity, a big word that means the brain can change and adapt. Every time you resist a temptation and stick to your plan, you're strengthening the neural pathways for self-control. It's like doing reps in a mental gym. Over time, what was once hard can become easier. People who consistently practice discipline, whether through sports, studying, or meditation, often find their capacity for focus and willpower grows. Your brain is learning that, hey, I am the kind of person who can do this hard thing.
I love that. It's empowering to know that self-discipline isn't a fixed trait you either have or don't. It's something you can develop. In a way, you're training your brain every time you push through a challenge. And that's a perfect lead-in to talking about building those habits and routines that make discipline a part of daily life. Ready to move from brain science into habit formation?
Absolutely. Let's get practical and talk about how to build self-discipline into our lifestyle through habits and smart strategies.
Building habits and overcoming temptations.
Now that we know our brain can be trained and that taking action creates motivation, let's talk about building habits, which is the practical side of self-discipline. Habits really are the foundation of consistent self-discipline. When you have good habits in place, you don't have to exert as much willpower to do the right thing. It happens almost on autopilot. But creating those habits in the first place does take some conscious effort.
A great strategy is to make the good choices easy and the bad choices hard. This is sometimes called choice architecture. Basically, design your environment to favor the right choices. For example, if you want to practice guitar every evening, keep your guitar on a stand in the living room where you see it a visual cue. If you want to eat healthier, stock your kitchen with fruits and veggies at eye level and hide the junk food or don't buy it in the first place. On the flip side, if TV or the internet distracts you from work, maybe put the TV remote in another room or use website blocker apps during your study time. Out of sight, out of mind really works.
I've done this myself. I used to scroll through social media when I wanted to be reading more books. So I literally put my phone in a drawer for an hour in the evenings and left a book on my coffee table. It was amazing how much more reading I got done when the phone wasn't sitting there calling my name. We have to remember our willpower is limited. So setting up our environment to minimize temptations is a smart way to stay consistent without draining that willpower too much.
Another technique I highly recommend is the 10-minute rule. When you feel an urge to break your discipline, say the urge to play video games instead of studying, or to eat a cookie when you're trying to eat healthy, tell yourself, I'll wait just 10 minutes. Often that wave of craving will pass on its own. After 10 minutes, you usually find it's easier to say no, or you're engrossed in something else and forgot about the temptation.
I love that. You're not forbidding yourself outright, which can sometimes make you want it more. You're just postponing the decision. And more often than not, the urge will subside and you regain control.
Let's try a little role play to illustrate this in action. We'll simulate the internal battle between temptation and discipline. I'll be me, trying to stick to a goal, and Sarah, you be the voice of temptation in my head.
Sounds fun. Okay, let's set the scene. It's evening, and you're planning to go to the gym, but Netflix is tempting you. Role play scenario. Hey, Michael, you've had a long day. Wouldn't it be nice to just skip the gym and binge that new show? One night off won't hurt. Just one episode to relax, come on.
I do want to relax, but I also promised myself I'd exercise tonight.
You're tired. You deserve a break. The couch is so comfy right now. Gym can wait.
I know, but I'll tell you what, I'll put on my workout clothes and do just a quick 10-minute workout. If I still feel exhausted after 10 minutes, I'll stop and watch the show guilt-free.
Fine. Only 10 minutes, and then we get the couch.
Deal. Starts exercising. Actually, now that I'm moving, I'm feeling a bit more energized. This isn't so bad. I might as well keep going for the full workout.
Wait, what about our deal? We said 10 minutes.
True, but I'm already in the zone. I'll do my full routine and the show will be my reward afterward.
Oh man. Foiled again by your annoying self-discipline. End of role play. That was fun and pretty true to life. What Michael did there was clever. He bargained with his own temptation. By saying just 10 minutes, he lowered the barrier to starting. And once he started, he got into it and decided to keep going. Often, just getting started is the hardest part, and after that, it gets easier.
Exactly. And notice I also promised myself a reward the show after the workout. It's perfectly fine to reward yourself for doing the hard thing. In fact, giving yourself a reward can reinforce the habit loop. In our little skit, the reward was watching the show, but only after the workout. That way, my brain starts to associate finishing the workout with getting something enjoyable.
Another crucial strategy is starting small. We touched on this earlier, but let's emphasize it. Many people set overly ambitious goals and then burn out or get discouraged. It's better to start with a ridiculously easy version of your habit. One expert on habits, James Clear, often says, if you want to run a marathon, your first habit might just be putting on your running shoes. Seriously, just that. Make the first step so easy you can't say no. If that means just jogging around the block or doing 5 push-ups a day to start, so be it. Those small wins build confidence and momentum.
Absolutely. When I wanted to start journaling regularly, I told myself to write just one sentence each night. One sentence. It felt almost silly, but guess what? Once I had my notebook out and wrote that sentence, I'd often end up writing a paragraph or two. And on nights I truly only wrote one sentence, that was still a success because I kept the streak alive. I stayed consistent, and consistency is key.
Consistency is so powerful. Doing a little bit every day beats doing a lot once in a while and then quitting. It's like the difference between a steady drumbeat versus an occasional loud crash. The steady beat is what actually drives progress over time. And psychologically, when you see yourself showing up day after day, you start to identify as a disciplined person. It becomes part of your identity. I'm someone who doesn't quit. That identity shift is a real game changer for long-term motivation.
Another tool to mention, accountability. We humans are social creatures, and we often follow through better when we know someone else is watching or cheering us on. If you can, find a friend or a group with similar goals. Check in with each other or even make a pact. For example, agree to meet a friend at the gym 3 times a week or text each other nightly to confirm you did your writing. Knowing that your buddy will ask, "Did you do it?" can provide that extra nudge on days when your internal motivation is low.
There are also apps and programs that leverage this. Some people use commitment contracts where, say, you stake a bit of money that you'll lose if you don't stick to your plan. There are apps that will donate your money to a charity you hate if you fail. Talk about motivation. Others join online challenges or communities for support. The key idea if you fail, you don't have to rely solely on willpower in isolation. You can engineer support and a bit of external pressure to help you stay on track.
I know, but I'll tell you what, I'll put on my workout clothes and do just a quick 10-minute workout. If I still feel exhausted after 10 minutes, I'll stop and watch the show guilt-free.
Mindset, growth, grit, and embracing failure.
Let's shift to mindset. How we think about challenges and even about ourselves dramatically influences our self-discipline and resilience. One of the most powerful mindset shifts is going from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. These terms come from psychologist Carol Dweck. With a fixed mindset, we believe our abilities, like intelligence or talent, are set in stone. I'm either good at this or I'm not. With a growth mindset, we believe abilities can be developed through effort and learning. I can get better at this with practice.
The difference might sound abstract, but it's huge in practice. Imagine 2 people who both encounter a big setback, say they start a business and it fails, or they get a poor grade on an important exam. The person with a fixed mindset might think, "I guess I'm just not cut out for this. This failure shows I'm no good." They feel defeated and may give up. The person with a growth mindset is more likely to think, "Okay, that didn't go well this time. I learned a lot from it though. Let me use those lessons and try again." They see failure as a lesson, not a final verdict on their ability.
Research backs this up strongly. Dweck's studies have shown that people with a growth mindset tend to persevere more and ultimately achieve more. In fact, teaching people to have a growth mindset, for example, teaching students that the brain can grow stronger through challenge, has been linked to increased motivation and resilience. Simply believing that you can improve makes you more likely to bounce back and try again after setbacks. When you think of challenges as opportunities to learn, rather than doom and gloom, you become much tougher in the face of adversity.
In the growth mindset, even failure, as painful as it can be, is seen as part of the growth process. It reminds me of that famous Thomas Edison quote. When Edison was inventing the light bulb, he supposedly failed hundreds of times. He said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That's pure growth mindset and resilience. Each failure was just an information gathering step, not the end of the story.
I love that. And we can cultivate that kind of mindset in ourselves. In fact, I remember when I first started public speaking in my career. After a couple of shaky presentations, I almost labeled myself a bad speaker and wanted to avoid it entirely. That was a fixed mindset at work. But a mentor of mine challenged me to see those talks as practice, not proof of failure. I realized I could improve if I worked at it. The next time, I actively asked for feedback and studied what I could do better. Over time, my presentations got much smoother. I actually started looking forward to speaking opportunities instead of dreading them. It was a real-life lesson for me in how adopting a growth mindset, believing I could get better, made a huge difference. One useful trick is to add the word "yet" to your self-talk. If you catch yourself thinking, "I can't do this," reframe it to, "I can't do this yet." That one little word changes the statement from a dead end to a work in progress. It leaves the door open for improvement. It reminds you that with time and effort, you may be able to do it.
Another aspect of a resilient mindset is how we explain setbacks to ourselves. There's something in psychology called explanatory style. People who are optimistic and resilient tend to explain a failure as temporary and specifically this was just one bad day, or "I didn't study enough this time on this topic." They don't generalize it to mean "I'm a complete failure" or "I'll never succeed." On the other hand, people who get demoralized easily might see a setback as permanent and personal. "I messed up because I'm bad at this, and I'll always be bad." Simply being aware of this inner dialogue and challenging those negative generalizations can build mental toughness. We can learn to talk to ourselves in a more encouraging, rational way.
Exactly. We can train ourselves to respond to failure or criticism with curiosity instead of shame. Instead of, I'm no good at public speaking, a growth mindset asks, what can I learn from that presentation that went poorly? How can I improve for next time? That shift in thinking keeps you trying.
Also, when we talk about mindset, we have to mention grit again, that passion and perseverance for long-term goals. Having a gritty mindset means you've committed to a purpose or mission, and you don't let short-term setbacks derail you. Interestingly, researchers have noted that having a sense of purpose can fuel grit if you deeply care why you're doing something. You're more likely to stick with it through difficulties. One study even found that having a clear and valued purpose can markedly strengthen resilience. When you know your why, the how, no matter how tough, becomes more bearable.
Great point. And that leads us into the topic of long-term motivation, sustaining your drive over months or years. But before we move on, one more thought on mindset. If you're listening and thinking, I don't know if I'm a very disciplined person, remember, these qualities are not set in stone. You can start developing them today. Every small promise you keep to yourself, every time you treat a challenge as a chance to learn, you're shifting your mindset toward growth and resilience.
Right. The mindset of self-discipline is really about believing improvement is possible and that you have a say in your own development. With that belief, you become more resilient to bumps in the road. And as you said, understanding your deeper purpose will also supercharge your motivation. So let's delve into that, finding your why and staying motivated for the long haul.
Emotional intelligence, the human element of resilience.
Before we jump into purpose, let's consider another angle, the emotional side of all this. We've talked about habits and mindset, but what about our feelings and relationships? This is where emotional intelligence comes in. Emotional intelligence, often called EQ, is basically the ability to understand and manage your own emotions, and to understand and influence the emotions of others. It includes skills like self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skills.
You might be wondering, how does that relate to self-discipline or resilience? It turns out it's hugely important. Think about it, life will throw stress, frustration, and disappointment at us. If we don't handle those feelings well, it's easy to either quit our efforts or burn out. People with high emotional intelligence tend to weather storms more effectively. They can stay calm under pressure or regain calm more quickly. They can motivate themselves with positive self-talk instead of getting lost in negative emotions.
For example, when a setback happens, an emotionally intelligent person might acknowledge, okay, I'm feeling pretty upset and discouraged right now. That's self-awareness. But then they choose a healthy way to respond. That's self-regulation. Maybe they reframe the situation, or they take a short break to clear their head instead of, say, throwing in the towel. They don't deny their emotions, but they don't let the emotions drive the bus off the road, so to speak.
Empathy and social connection are also huge. During tough times, resilient people often lean on a support network. Having friends, family, or colleagues to talk to can make a world of difference. And emotional intelligence helps you build those strong relationships. One psychology expert noted that a person who is self-aware, adaptable, and empathetic will be able to survive and thrive through a crisis because they have the social skills to handle unexpected situations and to advocate for themselves. In other words, being able to communicate to say, I'm struggling, can we talk? Or being able to receive and give empathy can really bolster your resilience.
And sometimes showing up for others can strengthen you too. I found that when I'm going through a tough time, reaching out to encourage or help a friend who's also struggling actually boosts my own spirits. It's a reminder that I'm not helpless. I can make a difference, even if it's just offering a listening ear. That sense of connection and purpose bounces back and makes me more resilient as well. There's also the aspect of being kind to yourself. This might sound counterintuitive in a discussion about discipline. We often think discipline means being hard on yourself. But self-compassion is actually a powerful motivator. Research shows that harsh self-criticism often backfires. It increases stress and can undermine resilience, whereas treating yourself with understanding, when you slip up, reduces stress and increases resilience. Think about it. If a friend came to you feeling like a failure after a setback, you wouldn't say, yeah, "You suck. You should quit." At least I hope not. You'd likely say something encouraging, right? Maybe. "It's just one setback. You'll get it next time. I believe in you." We need to do that for ourselves too.
I learned this from my own experience. I used to mentally beat myself up whenever I slipped or failed, thinking it would make me tougher, but it actually made me more frustrated and likely to give up. Now I understand emotional intelligence means you don't spend hours kicking yourself for a mistake. You acknowledge what happened, forgive yourself, and focus on the next step. I like to say, talk to yourself, don't listen to yourself when your mind is being overly negative. By that, I mean proactively choose a constructive inner voice, like telling myself, all right, that didn't work out, but I learned something. Let's adjust and try again, instead of just passively listening to the voice that says, I'm no good, I can't do this. Essentially, become your own coach, not your own bully.
And sometimes showing up for others can strengthen you too. I've found that when I'm going through a tough time, reaching out to encourage or help a friend who's also struggling actually boosts my own spirits. It's a reminder that I'm not helpless. I can make a difference, even if it's just offering a listening ear. That sense of connection and purpose bounces back and makes me more resilient as well. That's a great tip. Another part of emotional intelligence is knowing when to recharge. Self-discipline doesn't mean grinding 24/7 without rest. That leads to burnout, which is the enemy of long-term motivation. The resilient, disciplined people we admire often have good self-care habits. They get enough sleep. They take breaks. They might meditate or exercise to manage stress. I know a quick jog or even a short breathing exercise can do wonders for my mood on a stressful day. Being in tune with your emotional and physical state lets you catch exhaustion or frustration early and do something about it, rather than ignoring it until you hit a breaking point.
So true. In sum, developing emotional intelligence, being mindful of your emotions, practicing empathy, nurturing relationships, and showing yourself some compassion creates a strong support system both inside you and around you. That way, when challenges arise, you're not alone and you're not at the mercy of runaway emotions. Instead, you have emotional resilience to complement your mental resilience.
Okay, now let's talk about that purpose we hinted at. Basically, the big why that drives long-term motivation. This is like the heart behind all the discipline and toughness we've been discussing.
Long-term motivation. Finding your why and sustaining passion.
Now let's talk about long-term motivation and the power of purpose, essentially why we do what we do. We've covered tools and mindsets to get you through the day-to-day challenges, but how do we stay motivated over years as we pursue big goals or live out our values? What keeps us going for the long haul?
This is where having a deeper reason, a purpose, becomes crucial. If self-discipline is the engine that keeps you moving, purpose is the fuel for that engine. It's really hard to be disciplined in the long run about something you don't truly care about. You might force yourself for a while, especially with extrinsic motivators like pressure or rewards, but real sustainability comes from intrinsic motivation, doing something because it genuinely matters to you on the inside.
Exactly. Intrinsic motivation could be a passion for the activity itself, or it could be the meaning you attach to the outcome. For example, someone training to become a doctor might push through the grueling years of study, not just for a degree or a high-paying job. Those are extrinsic motivators, but because they genuinely want to heal people and make a difference in the world. That's a deeply intrinsic motive. When you hit those moments of doubt or fatigue, remembering that why, I'm doing this to help others or to provide for my family or to achieve a dream I've had for years, can reignite your drive.
History is full of examples of purpose fueling resilience. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived concentration camps, wrote that having meaning was key to survival in dire conditions. He quoted Nietzsche, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." Now, that's an extreme scenario, but it shows the principle. The human spirit can endure incredible hardship if it has a reason. On a more everyday level, think of a single parent working 2 jobs and still going to night school because they want to create a better life for their kids. That perseverance comes from love and purpose.
When your drive comes from within, you're more likely to keep going even when external rewards or recognition are absent. The journey itself becomes rewarding. People often talk about being in the zone or enjoying the process. That's a sign of intrinsic motivation at work. Sure, external things like money or awards can motivate us for a while, but they often aren't enough when the going gets really tough or when you achieve them and then ask, now what? Purpose and personal meaning are like a well that doesn't run dry in the same way.
Speaking of personal meaning, let's talk about transformation. Pursuing a long-term goal with discipline doesn't just get you to the external goal, it changes you on the inside. The process itself is transformative. Maybe you set out to run a marathon. Yes, you'll hopefully reach the finish line, but along the way you might become a more confident, resilient person. You prove to yourself that you can overcome obstacles, and that realization can carry into other areas of life. This kind of personal growth is one of the greatest rewards of consistent effort.
It's true. Many people, when reflecting on a long journey, whether it's building a business, mastering a craft, or overcoming a personal challenge, say that who they became in the process mattered even more than the achievement itself. The discipline, patience, and insights they gained were life-changing. In a sense, the goal gives you a direction, but the journey gives you growth. So even if your motivation dips at times, think about the identity you're shaping. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become.
Let's do a quick thought experiment here. Imagine yourself, say, 5 or 10 years in the future. There are 2 versions of you. Version A is the result of you consistently applying the principles we've talked about: self-discipline, resilience, learning from setbacks, sticking with your goals. Version B is the result of giving up whenever it got hard, or always procrastinating and making excuses.
Close your eyes and really picture it. In version A, you wake up on a typical day 5 years from now, and because of your consistent efforts, you're living closer to your ideals. Maybe you're in a career you find fulfilling, or you've built your own business. Perhaps you're physically healthier because you stuck to that exercise routine. You have stronger relationships because you invested time and effort into them. You feel confident tackling new challenges because over the years you've proven to yourself that you can. This version of you has a sense of pride and peace that comes from knowing you didn't quit on yourself.
That really puts things in perspective. Long-term motivation is about playing the long game with your life. It's recognizing that consistency beats intensity. Doing something small every day trumps doing something big, but only once in a while. It's also about reconnecting with your why whenever you feel lost. Some people find it helpful to write down their reasons and read them on tough days, or to visualize the outcome they want and the impact it will have.
The contrast is stark, isn't it? And here's the important thing: we all have the power, starting today, to steer ourselves toward that version A. No matter where you are right now, you can decide to change course. It won't happen overnight, but day by day, small disciplines and acts of perseverance will accumulate. 5 years will pass. No matter what, you might as well be steadily building something you're proud of.
The beautiful thing is that as you stay on the path of personal growth and discipline, you often inspire people around you as well. Your kids, friends, coworkers. Motivation and positivity can be contagious. Your transformation could very well spark others to start their own.
And remember, your why can evolve over time too. Maybe you started writing music because you loved its intrinsic joy, but over time you see it inspiring others, and that becomes an additional motivator. Or you initially exercise to look better, but later you keep going because you realize how much happier and more energetic you are when you're fit. Stay open to finding new sources of inspiration in your journey.
Exactly. It's about progress, not perfection, and about direction, not speed. With that, we've covered a lot of ground today. Wow, that's a powerful realization. So what did Alex do once he had that motivation?
Putting it all together. A personal journey.
Before we wrap up, let me share a brief real-life story that ties all of these elements together. My friend Alex found himself at a crossroads a couple of years ago. He was in his late 30s, significantly overweight, and his doctor had warned him that he was at risk for type 2 diabetes if he didn't make some changes. Alex was also feeling down and stuck in a rut in life generally. One day, he told me he got winded just playing with his young son, and that really hit him hard. That was his wake-up call. His why became crystal clear. He wanted to be healthy, to watch his son grow up, and to set a good example for him.
That sounds like the critical point many of us face, when the excitement wears off and the real test of self-discipline begins. What helped him push through that phase?
At first, he was all fired up. He went out and signed up for a charity 10K run that was 6 months away, thinking that having an event on the calendar would keep him accountable. This was a big goal for someone who hadn't run since his school days. In the beginning, he was fueled by motivation. He bought new running shoes, went for jogs in the park, and cleaned up his diet. He actually lost a few pounds in the first month. But, and this is where it gets interesting, after that initial excitement faded, reality set in. Waking up early to run was hard. He started missing workouts when it rained or when he felt tired. By the third month, he hit a plateau with his weight loss and even gained a couple of pounds back. He told me he was feeling discouraged and even considered dropping out of the 10K.
Smart move. He basically reduced the friction to exercise by creating a routine and allowing a lighter effort on days he wasn't feeling it. How about the diet side or other aspects?
A few things changed for Alex at that point. First, he realized he needed better structure. Pure willpower wasn't enough to carry him. So he applied some of the strategies we've discussed. He set a strict routine, for example, going to bed by 10 p.m. so it was easier to wake up at 6 a.m. for a run. He laid out his workout clothes each night, his cue for the habit. He also made a deal with himself, much like our 10-minute rule. On days he absolutely didn't feel like running, he'd at least go for a 10-minute walk. Often he'd end up jogging once he got going, but giving himself permission to just walk lowered the mental barrier on those low motivation days.
Those are great practical steps. Did he face any setbacks during this period?
He did something clever there too. He told his family about his goals and got his wife on board with eating healthier. They removed a lot of junk food from the house classic choice architecture. If there were no cookies in the pantry, the late night snacking temptations were gone. He also noticed he often craved sweets most on stressful work days, so he made a rule whenever he felt that urge from stress, he would step away from his desk and take a short walk or do a few minutes of deep breathing instead of grabbing a candy bar. In this way, he was not only changing his diet, but also training himself to handle stress more healthily. Instead of ice cream, he kept nuts and fruit around for snacks. He also found a running partner, a neighbor who was training for the same charity run. That added some accountability and made those 6 a.m. runs less lonely. He knew someone was waiting for him.
That's a great example of resilience and a growth mindset. He didn't let the injury derail him. He adapted and found other ways to keep improving. So what happened when race day came?
Oh, definitely. About 2 months before the 10K, Alex injured his ankle playing pickup basketball. Nothing major, but the doctor told him to rest it for a few weeks. This was a huge blow to his momentum. He told me he was really upset. He worried he would lose all his progress, and he fell into a bit of a funk. This is where his resilience was tested. Initially, he felt like, oh, why does this happen now? Maybe I'm just not meant to be a runner. That's that fixed mindset and defeatist thinking creeping in. But then he caught himself. Instead of giving up, he used the recovery time to double down on other aspects of his health. He focused more on his diet since he couldn't burn as many calories running, and he did gentle exercises and stretching that didn't involve the ankle. He also spent time learning. He read about running form and training methods, basically staying engaged with his goal mentally even when he couldn't physically run.
That's a great example of resilience and a growth mindset. He didn't let the injury derail him. He adapted and found other ways to keep improving. So what happened when race day came? I love that. It's a perfect example of how self-discipline, applied consistently, leads to personal growth. And it highlights so many things we've talked about. He had a strong reason, his family and health. He built supportive habits and an environment. He used accountability and social support. He faced a setback and met it with resilience and a plan B. And he kept a growth mindset by learning and not viewing the injury as the end of the road.
Race day came, and guess what? Not only did Alex finish the 10K, he ran the whole thing without needing to walk. He wasn't breaking any speed records, but that wasn't the point. His son and wife were at the finish line cheering, and he said that was one of the proudest moments of his life. Over those 6 months, he lost about 20 pounds, but more importantly, he transformed his mindset and lifestyle. Even after the race, he kept up his running routine and set new goals. He actually signed up for a half marathon next. He told me he now sees himself as an active person for the first time in decades.
Thanks for sharing that story. It's really inspiring and ties everything together in a real-world way. I think a lot of listeners can see a bit of themselves in Alex. I know I can. And it shows that these ideas aren't just theory. They truly can lead to positive, tangible changes in our lives.
Exactly. Alex's story shows that while motivation was the spark, it was consistency and mindset that carried him through to the end and beyond, since it became a lifestyle change. The journey not only improved his health, but also boosted his confidence and emotional well-being. He mentioned that even at work, he's now more focused and less prone to giving up when projects hit snags. It's like the discipline he built in one area spread to others. That often happens when you train one aspect of your character, it can uplift your whole life.
And finally, we'd like to leave you with a few reflective questions. Take some time to think about these and maybe even jot down your answers later. What is one goal or area of your life that truly matters to you, and why does it matter? How can you remind yourself of that why when things get tough? Which daily habit, even a tiny one, could you start or strengthen to become 1% better each day? What's one thing you can do today to practice self-discipline in that area? Think of a recent setback or challenge you faced. How might you view it through a growth mindset, as an opportunity to learn or adapt, rather than seeing it as a defeat? If something similar happens again, what would you do differently in response? Who are the people that support or inspire you in your journey? How can you involve them or seek accountability to help you stay on track toward your goals?
That was a lot to cover. Before we finish, let's summarize some key takeaways from our conversation. These are the points to remember on your own journey of self-discipline and personal growth. Self-discipline is like a muscle. It strengthens with consistent practice and can weaken if neglected. Build it through small daily habits and by reducing unnecessary temptations or decisions. Structure your environment and routines to make the disciplined choice the easy choice. Resilience and mental toughness mean bouncing back from failures and persisting through challenges. Every setback can teach you something. Don't view obstacles as stop signs, but rather as part of the process that makes you stronger. The more you bounce back, the more confidence you build for next time. Growth mindset is crucial. Embrace the belief that you can improve with effort. Treat failures not as permanent verdicts on your ability, but as temporary setbacks and learning opportunities. This attitude fuels long-term motivation, learning, and adaptability. Emotional intelligence helps sustain your discipline and resilience. Stay aware of your emotions and manage stress in healthy ways rather than venting or quitting. Use empathy in your support network. Talk to friends or mentors to help you cope with challenges. And remember to practice self-compassion. Encourage yourself like you would a friend rather than tearing yourself down. Consistency is key. Big achievements are built on small actions repeated regularly. Showing up even when you don't feel like it, even if in a minimal way, beats relying on rare bursts of inspiration. Consistency not only produces results, but it also reinforces your identity. You become what you repeatedly do. Purpose is your anchor. Know your why. When your goals are tied to your core values or a mission that genuinely inspires you, that intrinsic motivation will carry you through the toughest times. A clear sense of purpose makes discipline and hard work feel worthwhile, even fulfilling, because you know it's leading you towards something meaningful.
What is one goal or area of your life that truly matters to you, and why does it matter? How can you remind yourself of that why when things get tough? Which daily habit, even a tiny one, could you start or strengthen to become 1% better each day? What's one thing you can do today to practice self-discipline in that area? Think of a recent setback or challenge you faced. How might you view it through a growth mindset, as an opportunity to learn or adapt rather than seeing it as a defeat? If something similar happens again, what would you do differently in response? Who are the people that support or inspire you in your journey? How can you involve them or seek accountability to help you stay on track toward your goals? Remember, developing self-discipline, resilience, and all these qualities is a journey. Be patient with yourself and celebrate the small wins along the way.
We encourage you to mull over those questions and perhaps discuss them with a friend or write down your answers. Sometimes gaining that clarity is the first step toward real change.
Until next time, take care and keep striving for that better you. You've got this.
Absolutely. Every great transformation is just a series of small steps taken one day at a time. Your journey is unique, so keep your focus on your own progress rather than comparing yourself to others.
Thank you for joining us in this deep exploration of mindset, science, and personal growth. We hope you found some useful insights and perhaps a bit of inspiration that you can apply in your own life.
Stay consistent, stay resilient, and keep that growth mindset strong. Your future self will thank you for it.
Until next time, take care and keep striving for that better you. You've got this.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Mental Mastery, the psychology of growth and grit. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Join us next time for more insights on mastering your mind.